The Doctor. In the TARDIS. Next stop everywhere.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Charles Skaggs, back in the TARDIS, or as much as in the TARDIS as we can, given the current climate these days. But, I'm here, ready to talk some Doctor Who, and joining me, of course, is my partner in time, and a special guest companion whom I'm going to introduce in a minute. But for right now, Jesse Jackson, how you doing?
I am great, Charles. I am busy in my mundane day job, so this is really a treat to get to talk to the Who universe with you, and I love all our guest companions. But between you and I, there's a special little excitement when we get this one joining us.
Well, between you, I, and, everybody else that downloads these episodes, I think I know who you're talking about because, hey, she's right here. So everybody, please welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere, the ever-delightful Hannah Skorapa. Welcome back to Next Stop Everywhere.
Thanks for having me once again, Charles.
Well, you're always welcome. We love having you on here. We always have fun talking to you. I hope you feel the same. Because if you didn't, I feel bad because you keep coming back if you're not having fun. So
yeah, we keep bringing her back. So
exactly.
Hopefully she is doing it.
Yeah, I would hate to think that you're miserable, but
well, I'm like one of the servants in the house. I just keep coming back, no matter what.
Yes.
Well, hopefully not to meet a grisly demise, however improbable and impossible. So, and then of course that kind of teases us up because here at episode 190, we're only 10 away from the mighty 200, you guys, of Next Stop Everywhere. We are going to talk the Chimes of Midnight. And this is one that a lot of people have either mentioned or brought up or just hoped that we would do because it's one of the very popular, the most popular, I think, Big Finish audios ever. It's very highly regarded, and I'm really looking forward to talking about that with both Hannah and Jesse because there's a lot to this one, and I think it's going to be one that we're going to have fun dissecting. At least I. And so, Jesse, now? Obviously, this is, I'm guessing, your first time listening to this audio. So,
yes,
so before we get into our little nitty gritty, why don't you give us a little brief thoughts on what you thought about this story?
Yeah, this is really the first Big Finish audio featuring Paul McGann that I'd listened to, and I was doing some research after I listened to the whole thing that there are many in the audience that rank this as the Blink version of Big Finish audios, which is pretty high praise. And I don't disagree. This was I gave you a little hint when we were discussing Stargirl on the Phantom Zone podcast. Blatant plug. Listen soon. How to reach that.
Yep.
I told you how much I loved it. This was really, really well done. The selfish me would love to see this filmed.
Right.
Just because it was so great, but it's pretty darn perfect just as an audio version. So, yeah, I liked it a lot.
All right. And yeah, I tend to agree. I think it would be very cool to see animated at some point, but it's perfectly structured for audio in the meantime. So, Hannah, let's talk with you for just a little bit. Without, obviously, we know we're going to talk about our topics, but what's your general take? Was this your first time listening to this, or have you listened to this audio before?
I have listened to this one 3 times, twice for this podcast.
Yep. I appreciate your due diligence.
Yes, this was also, like Jesse, my first exposure to Paul McGann, mine in general, because the movie these days is so hard to get your hands on. But I would agree that this is definitely a nice one to jump on to Big Finish with, because you really don't need to know a ton about the Eighth Doctor or Charley going into this, and the information gaps they explain quite well. I think this would probably be, audio is the best medium for this, considering just the soundscape of it all, like every time the house resets. I mean, it does have a certain dreamlike quality to it.
Yeah, I tend to agree. If we don't get it, in some form of visual format, I'm okay with that because it's so good on audio.
Well said, Charles.
But I think it would be interesting to see if you could pull it off, maybe in a very kind of surreal, dreamlike way, perhaps on video. But maybe that's just me because, hey, I'm a big David Lynch fan, and so that's kind of where my brain goes as far as visual style.
Go ahead, Hannah. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
No, you're good.
No, you're fine.
Go ahead, Hannah.
Okay, I definitely, listening to this multiple times, I picked up more on the little details. Like, I don't know if Jesse caught this, but at the beginning you hear the
right,
and I'm like, now just right before the TARDIS lands. So the first time I listened to it, I had no idea what was going on, but it definitely has. I wouldn't say rewatchability, but re-listenability, if that's even a word.
Yeah, go ahead. Jesse.
I'm right there with you. This is really a complex story that's easy to understand, if that makes sense. I mean, they do a great job of carrying you through the story. It isn't sometimes in Big Finish audios, and I've shared this with Charles. I got confused, Charles. I don't know what's going on. This one, I knew when I was confused, I was supposed to be confused. And I do think that I'm just being greedy to want to see this filmed, because this is really well done, great storytelling. So yeah, go ahead, Charles. I kind of interrupted you.
Right. No, yeah, that's okay. That's cool. I'm glad to see everybody's enthusiastic about talking about this.
Yeah.
As for me, like Hannah, this is kind of my 4th time going through this, but it's been quite a while since I've listened to it. Because obviously, I've got the right here in my hot little hands.
You do.
Physical media. Remember physical media?
Absolutely, yes.
So I'm holding the CD, and it's a particularly it's been around since 2002. So obviously when it first came out, I had to kind of devour it over and over because there weren't as many Big Finish audios back then. And but obviously as the years have gone by and more have piled up in my library, it's taken a long time for me to get back to this one. So this was a great excuse to go back. I found myself really enjoying this one once again. Remembered why I loved it so much, and it's such a great showcase for Paul McGann's Doctor and Charley. And it doesn't hurt that, hey, I'm a big Paul McGann 8th Doctor fan because, hey, I'm rocking my 8th Doctor t-shirt today, which I also got way back in the day, back when the TV movie actually came out in '96. I've had this hanging around my closet for a while, but I had to trot it out for this very special occasion.
I mean, before we jump into the topics, I'd argue that if you have a new fan and you want to introduce them to the Eighth Doctor, and you're not quite sure if the TV movie will leave the best impression, because Eric Roberts.
Right.
I think this is a good way to do it.
Yeah,
this audio.
Yeah, we shouldn't. Especially if you've seen The Night of the Doctor, I don't think you should judge McGann's Doctor just because of the TV movie. Because, obviously he's done a lot of Big Finish audio since then. Some of them just really fantastic. He's a great actor. If you've seen him in other things like Luther or, like The Queen of the Damned or other things, he's just a phenomenal actor. And I'm glad to see. I was really glad, especially back in 2002, to see him getting his due. Because obviously with the TV movie not being picked up to series, when this audio first came out, this was all we had. As far as we were concerned back in the day, this was New Who. I mean, we had no idea that there was going to be another series coming. The announcement didn't come until like 2003, so we're still a year off. So as far as we knew, the Big Finish audios was the official continuation of Doctor Who. Until Russell T Davies brought the show back, and so this seemed like this stories like this really mattered because we had we were in the wilderness years and didn't have anything new episode wise on TV to compare it against. So
I mean, though the crazy thing is, if you really think about it, unless you count Night of the Doctor, Paul McGann never really quit playing the Doctor. I mean, just thinking he's gonna be in the Time Lord Victorious audios, and he had a recent release, if I'm not mistaken, just a few months ago.
So
yeah.
to name drop, as Charles knows, because I bring this up anytime Paul McGann is brought up, I was lucky enough to interview him at Comic Palooza several years ago, and he was, first off, incredibly charming, a great person to interview, but he shared that how easy it was to get in character because of all the Big Finish audios, that he never felt like he quit playing the Doctor, and he was so thrilled that they were able to keep it a secret and that he was able to do that. And in fact, it was released on his birthday, and he said he got a text from Moffat saying, the Eighth Doctor lives, happy birthday, and, sent him that it was live. So I've always got a little bitty of affection for him because I was getting to talk to him, and such a good guy. And then to hear this story is so well done, so layered, and a really good mystery, and creepy, which I know Charles always loves a little creepy in the Doctor.
Oh, yeah.
This is greatness.
Doctor Who, creepy Doctor Who is the best Doctor Who as far as I'm concerned. All right, so let's start diving into this a little bit. Just a quick overview. This is written by Robert Shearman, who primarily known for writing the Ninth Doctor era episode Dalek, which of course brought the Daleks back in the modern era. Big episode there. That was the only episode that he wrote for the TV series. He also wrote the Sixth Doctor Big Finish audio Jubilee, which is another very well-regarded one, which Dalek was kind of sort of based around.
Funnily enough, I listened to that fairly recently. It was good.
Yeah, it is good. I mean, I love Maggie Stables as Evelyn. She's really good in that.
Mm-hmm.
She's probably one of the best companions for the Sixth Doctor ever.
Yep.
And then he also wrote the Eighth Doctor Big Finish audio Scherzo, which I am not a particular fan of, but I know a lot of people are, so I'm not going to judge one way or the other. But it's not a particular favorite of mine. But I know a lot of people like it, so I'm going to say one thing one way or the other. Directed by Barnaby Edwards, and this was only the 29th release from Big Finish Productions, their Doctor Who monthly range back in 2002. So this is still kind of in Big Finish's infancy, doing Doctor Who audios, starring, of course, Paul McGann as the Eighth Doctor and India Fisher as Edwardian adventuress Charlotte Charley Pollard, who's one of my favorite Big Finish audio companions. Really, really like Charley a lot. No relation, of course. And guest cast, we have Louise Rolfe as Edith Thompson, Lennox Greaves as Mr. Shaughnessy, Sue Wallace as Mrs. Baddeley, Robert Kirbishley as Frederick, and Juliet Warner as Mary. And a little bit of trivia. If you're a fan of the ITV television series Upstairs, Downstairs, you might have noticed that the cook, Mrs. Baddeley, is named after actress Angela Baddeley, who played Mrs. Bridges on that series, and which was also set in a large Edwardian house, presumably not haunted by a temporal entity that has grown in strength and has come alive, become sentient. Shaughnessy, meanwhile, was named after the show's script editor, Alfred Shaughnessy. So apparently Robert Shearman's kind of a fan of Upstairs, Downstairs, I'm guessing. Just a little trivia tidbit for those of you Anglophiles that enjoy the British dramas. All right, got 3 topics today. And first topic, of course, I want to talk the Doc's Paradox. See what I did there? Meaning, of course, let's talk about the 8th Doctor, and let's talk about Charley. And because Charley, as those who have listened to the Big Finish audio Storm Warning, which was her debut, and when she became a companion of the 8th Doctor, was rescued from an airship disaster, the R-101, and the consequences of which play very heavily in this story. So, Jesse, I know this was your introduction to Charley, and Hannah, I know you've listened to this before, and since you're a special guest, why don't we go with you first?
Well, I would say I definitely really enjoyed the dynamic between the Doctor and Charley. I think it is interesting how he introduces her as his niece. It definitely do get a bit of a familial vibe off of the two of them with their interactions. I think probably my favorite bit is at the opening when they step out of the Lada and there's the bit with the jam and all that.
In the darkness of the larder, because they don't.
Yeah.
It's not lit, and so they kind of like show up in darkness. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah. I mean, that really got me hooked on Big Finish in general. That scene and all, because of just how well done it was. But that aside, I do think it is. Something I noticed about them that I wish carried a bit more over duos TARDIS teams in general, is the way there seems to be a constant back and forth with them working towards problem solving. Like, the Doctor presents a theory, Charley presents her own, they talk it through, and then they go forth. And just something I noticed, and I thought it was cool.
Yeah, and obviously, because it's a very modern approach to companions compared to the original, the classic TV series, I think. Because just Charley, I think, is, having more to do, having more opinions of her own, and being written, I think, much stronger than classic era companions, I would say. But do you like them as a TARDIS team?
I definitely do, and I've appreciated them more because I've listened to a few more others with the two of them since then.
Okay. And Jesse, how about you? What did you make of our companions? Because I know that, like I said, this is your introduction to Charley. So what did you make of her as a companion? So
I really liked her a lot. I'm intrigued in this whole him saving her from death, and what does that mean? You get the feeling at the very end there's a little bit of a
plot bunny?
Mystery, or a paradox.
Yes,
like going on a little bit. That's timey-wimey, which of course we love. She seemed to be very sharp, very bright. I did notice, as you said, Charles, that he called her his niece, which makes sense with Victorian. You wouldn't want to be
Attitudes,
traveling.
yeah.
Yes. He's very charming. He's very in control, which I love when the Doctor is in control.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some nice back and forth between them. I listened to this in the car, so I wasn't able to make a lot of notes. So I'm not going to have any quotes. But I really love their chemistry, and you can see there is a freshness and a newness between the Doctor and the companion that works a lot. Now, how long, like in the span of them traveling together, how long has she been with the Doctor at this point in her story?
Well,
Charles?
this is only their. So, I mean, to kind of put in season terms, this is only their second season together.
Okay.
They did because back then, they didn't do as many. Like the first season was only 4 audios, and then I think the second one was 6, if I'm not mistaken.
So
so this was basically their 6th story together.
Okay, so I was going to say, so they've had about 5 adventures previous to this, so a fair amount, but still fairly new.
Yeah, but
I liked it.
you can kind of get it. I think by this point they've kind of settled into their rhythm by now.
Yes, I agree.
And it really comes off. They play off so well with each other. McGann and India Fisher. I think they have, like you said, Jesse. I think they have great chemistry. And now obviously after listening to this back once again, I was kind of thinking, well, maybe we should go back and do Storm Warning now, because Charlie's first adventure, so you can kind of be officially introduced to her in a timey-wimey way, of course.
I think that would be pretty
after you've
cool
met her,
to
you're
see.
going to introduce her. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
and
go
has
ahead.
Has she done other things besides Big Finish Audio?
I'm sure she has, but primarily I know her from Big Finish Audio because her character was so popular. They eventually, a little bit of spoilers. When she leaves the 8th Doctor, she hooks up with the 6th Doctor, and
Nice.
they travel for a time, and then she kind of goes off and has her own solo Big Finish Audio series.
Good.
So Charley kind of gets her own audio series a little bit. So
Okay, good.
go
I
ahead.
did quickly pull up Wikipedia. Seems like India Fisher mainly does voice work. Prominently on the Wikipedia page, she's the narrator for MasterChef Junior in the UK, and also she's narrated the Girl on the Train audiobook. So,
Okay.
for those of you curious.
Yeah, I just
Thank you, Hannah, for looking that up.
I did IMDb. Yeah, it looks like she's done a lot of narrations, and so good stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, she still does Big Finish audios from time to time. So she's still, after all these years, still active with them. And, she's just a great performer, great audio performer, obviously.
Absolutely.
Much better voice than yours truly, but, that goes without saying, I think.
Yeah.
I really like this. The paradox with Charley is, obviously it's very timey-wimey, and I think it's one of the reasons why Stephen Moffat has gone on record saying that this is one of his favorites, because you could kind of see this almost being a Moffat-era script.
Mind if I just
go right ahead.
Raising my hand from the back of the class.
Yes. Hannah raises her hand. Go ahead. Yes, Hannah.
I've listened to this 3 times, and I'm still not sure how this, in the sense that we know it is like a disastrous paradox. So, is it the fact that Charley was supposed to die?
Yes.
And I mean, but I'm still trying to wrap my head around it.
Yeah. So to kind of, let's go ahead and we'll talk about this a little bit, because I'm sure you're not the only one that has a little time brain freeze a little bit, because this one can get a little complicated, I'll grant you. But basically, because Charley was rescued by the Doctor in Storm Warning, taken out of time, or she was supposed to die. She was fated to die in that crash. And no, as far as Charlie's concerned, like she just avoided dying. But here at the end of this audio, by the end of this audio, she's kind of aware that there are two timelines, the one where she died and the one where she lived. And so, but she has memories now of both of them. And it's something that plays out in later Big Finish audios. This whole, she's essentially something that, isn't part of the time continuum. Like she's essentially wrong now because because of her destiny was altered by the doctor. And as a result, there are some timey-wimey consequences, like I said, that play out, and it complicates things, and it obviously will put the doctor and her in kind of very moral dilemmas later on. So, go. Yes, no. Jesse raises his hand. Yes,
Charles,
yes,
Mr.
yes,
Charles.
yes.
So, Professor, does this
you
mean
can call me
that,
Professor because it makes me sound like the Seventh Doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does this mean that TARDIS does not like her because she is, or did they go to that path on this?
I think there was a little bit of that, but it wasn't overly focused on.
Okay.
If I recall, I mean, it's been like I said, it's been a while since I've really listened to Charlie's run.
Okay.
On the show, in the Big Finish audios, but if I recall correctly, I think there were things here and there scattered along the way.
Okay. It was great.
Go ahead,
Professor.
Yes.
Okay. So,
Yes, Hannah. Yes, go ahead.
So
You guys are just way too cute doing this. You know that, right?
So what? I mean, her not supposed being alive isn't so much what threw me through the loop. I know they tried to clarify it in the audio, but she's meeting Edith at a younger point in her life. How is this working where the older Edith who is not dead,
Yeah.
talking back? How is this working out? Because we've had characters meet out of order before, and nothing like this has happened. I'm just trying to wrap my head.
Well, basically, after Charley chooses to live, like there's that big. The doctor has to reach out through her across, time and convince her to not, to choose to live, and then together the doctor and Charley try to convince Edith not to kill herself, and she finally decides that she chooses to live as well, and that essentially gets rid of the house, the consciousness. That basically it's a whole big timey-wimey short circuit. Okay, so now then, and remember Edith died in, 1930?
Yeah.
So they go back to 1906 at the very end of the audio, and they confront Edith, years before she meets Charley, and they try, like Charley especially tries to convince Edith, hey, you are somebody, you are worthwhile, and you should be proud of being Edith Thompson. So therefore, they essentially, that conversation changes her life, so she doesn't end up killing herself later on.
Yeah, and I know we're going to get to that.
Yeah,
topic,
we are going to get to Edith. Yeah,
but that was a very poignant story.
Right.
Point that.
Am I explaining this at all? Making
no,
any
you're
sense?
explaining it
okay,
very well.
Good. Now teach it to me because I'm totally confused. No.
But just that Charley has this connection with her,
right?
And the idea that Edith had such affection for the young Charley,
yes,
that she felt like she had no purpose, right?
Yes.
That's a very poignant storyline and a very serious storyline for a quote-unquote audio drama. I really was impressed by that.
Yeah, because obviously we're going to talk about Edith, but Charley was the only good thing in her life. And then in the timeline where, because the R101 does crash, that crash does happen. So, and they find Charley's journal. So they presume that she was killed in the crash. So as far as she knows, Charley's dead. And that's the official story, that she was killed, even though secretly, she's traveling with the doctor. So Edith, poor Edith, lost the only person that ever treated her decently. And then as a result, just became so depressed and killed herself tragically. And so I think that's why it was so important when Charley goes back at the end of the episode to say, hey, look, forget these idiots that you work with. You matter. Your life matters. And as a result, as far as we know, that changed her outlook. At least that's the way it's kind of presented, where Edith, is humming along and she's like, I am somebody, and feels much more confident. So it's a nice little Christmas happy ending to the episode.
Yeah, well explained, Charles.
Yeah,
absolutely.
All right. Anything else about the Eighth Doctor and Charley? Because I loved McGann's frustration, with the servants, especially Shaughnessy, who's like constantly trying to convince him that, it's suicide. And at one point, he just kind of snaps back with a quick one-liner, and Charley has to scold him. I love that. She's like, Doctor.
Yes.
But I could totally understand his frustration.
Yeah, but also don't forget that really nice little bit where the Eighth Doctor wants to go for a drive, but Frederick and Mary softly threaten to kill him, and he just rolls with it. It's like, okay, I won't go for a drive then.
Yeah, well, just think about how many times the Doctor's been threatened with death. I'm sure by now he just blows it off. Like,
exactly.
It's like, it's a day ending in Y. I've been threatened with death.
Yes.
No big deal. It's like, I don't feel like myself unless I've been threatened by somebody. Something along those lines. But everybody, you enjoyed McGann's performance, and all right. Anything else about the Eighth Doctor and Charley before we move on?
No,
good?
I liked it.
All right. Topic number 2, upstairs, downstairs. Appropriately enough. So let's talk about Mr. Shaughnessy, Mrs. Baddeley, Mary, and Frederick. And their rather interesting attitudes towards Edith's murders, plural. So Jesse, let's start with you first on this one.
So part of the fun of this story is the repetition.
Yeah.
That they keep doing the same thing, and you keep thinking, man, that plum pudding, that's going to be something, because they keep talking about how important it is. It wouldn't be Christmas without plum pudding, and
Christmas wouldn't be Christmas without your plum pudding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And how at first they're just saying the same thing, and then the berating of, you're just the sculling maid, yeah. And then it'd be repeated over and over again. And then, like the scene with the chauffeur, can't get the car right. Can't remember what was the right car brand.
Yeah. Is it a Chrysler or
Chrysler,
a Bentley or a Bentley? Yeah.
And there's
and
Charles is.
The doctor kind of tripped him up intentionally on that.
Yes.
That was pretty funny.
And I did have to double check, Charles, because you may remember, but one of our very first audio dramas I had downloaded onto my iPhone and was listening to it in the car. I was going to Austin, and somehow it got on shuffle. And so I was like, I don't understand this story whatsoever. And it was only afterwards I'm like, okay, let's listen to this again. No wonder this didn't make sense. So I did check a couple of times, like, okay, am I repeating something, or am I repeating?
Yeah, shuffling.
What we've seen again because it's on repeat because there was so much dialogue the same. So all of them were interesting. They had certainly some stereotypes of of upstairs, downstairs, Downton Abbey, whatever you want to do. That British.
Yeah, if you watch Downton Abbey, you probably kind of have at least a visual idea of what these characters might look like. Yeah.
But it was just great, but they played to it correctly, as far as it wasn't so cliched that rolling your eyes. It was perfect. I really liked. Like I said, this was really a lot of fun, Charles.
Okay. That's awesome. Hannah, how about you? What'd you make of our household staff?
Something I appreciated with Robert Shearman's writing and the ability of the performers was how 1 minute their little quirks of each of them could seem so mundane, but on a dime they could just be turned up to just be creepy or anything like that, depending on whether or not Edith in the future or Edward Grove is influencing them. I mean, the orders from the master upstairs says I ought to kill you now.
Right.
And I mean,
very matter-of-factly, right? It's time to change this out.
I'm terribly sorry to upset you or trouble you, sir, but I'm afraid the master has insisted that I kill you now. Would that be all right? That kind of thing. Yeah.
You.
And Mrs. Badlett with Charley, where she's almost like she's really pushing that plum pudding on her, and then it gets really creepy because Charley kind of regresses back into childhood a little bit.
Will you make me plum pudding forever, even when I'm old?
Now that's totally creepy, right?
Yeah.
Well done. Well done.
That was good.
Yes.
Yes. Top marks. Well done.
Yeah. I mean, and it's kind of interesting how over time, gradually they forget Edith more and more, and eventually she just gets completely written out of their memory banks. Like, we don't know who this is. Yeah, the doctor has nothing more to investigate. Let's move on and wait for the master. And I did kind of wonder. I mean, I know the whole point of the story is discussing even how the smallest acts of kindness and decency matter, but
right.
What was their beef with Edith?
Right?
They were just so
they were just horrible.
To her.
Yeah, they were just. I mean,
they really were.
Yes. And it goes to show you, it's, no matter the social circle, no matter the time period, people can be real jerks to people if they want to.
Yes, absolutely.
And ostracize people. And I think it's just poor Edith is a victim of that because, they just kept criticizing, like, oh, this isn't clean enough, this isn't good enough. Even Charley, when she and the doctor first arrive and they see the dust everywhere, Charley right away just kind of assumes, well, hey, whoever she was, the scullery maid must not have been good at her job, and my father would have sacked her on the spot, that kind of thing. Yeah. So it just shows the attitudes, I think, that because she wasn't completely perfect, that they just dismissed her as a human being.
I think also something worth noting is Edith, obviously with the time period she grew up in and the circumstances of her class at the time, she was not educated, hence her not being able to write her own name. But I think this story kind of points out uneducated does not necessarily mean stupid. And she was very much aware of all those little things people would say to her or how they would act around her, and they just kept piling up over the years. So
Yeah, that's
yeah.
I mean, that's a great point. I think because
Absolutely.
a lot of people, they have that perception that like if you didn't go to the schools I went to, you must not be smart, and or if if you don't have at least this level of education, there's something wrong with you, and that's not the case at all. It just may be circumstances. It could be economic circumstances. It could be anything, and poor Edith, obviously, especially at this time period. Is a kind of a victim of that, where people just kind of dismiss her, and probably because she was in, she probably had a poor background, so therefore she wasn't educated, she wasn't gone to school, and therefore, people looked down on her, and then that just kind of fed her inferiority complex, I think.
I mean, also notice she makes no reference to family of any sort. So
yeah. So she could come from a broken home for all we know.
And I think this is so in line with the later Doctor Who, where Matt Smith's doctor's like, it's interesting. I've lived thousands of lifetimes and I've never met an uninteresting person.
Or anyone that wasn't important, yeah.
Yeah, and so this fits in with how the Doctor thinks about things, and the
well, the Doctor fights for the underdog, so
he does,
and that's what makes him or her such a great hero, is that they look out for that, the people that get stomped on, or just treated poorly. So the Doctor would totally be in Edith's corner, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I like I said, I love the idea that we take these stereotypes, we flip them on their side, and kind of play with it, and then we turn out that the least of us is actually what makes this, it sells the story. And I know we're going to talk about the next topic, but by making that small change, you made the dominoes tumble a different direction, and at least in this story, a better way.
Yeah. And all right. Anything else about the staff before we move on? All right. Topic number 3. Edward Grove is alive.
Edward Grove is alive.
Edward Grove is alive. So let's talk about Edith Thompson and Edward Grove, who apparently is alive, by all reports. So, Hannah, let's go with you first on this one. So, Edith, poor Edith, we've talked about her a little bit. What did you make of her character, her tragic character, and how Edward Grove feeds upon that and becomes, like this sentient house, feeding off of this time loop and this despair?
I think there is. I remember listening to this the first time and not catching on to what was going on. Obviously, that was the intent, and wondering first, what is this? But knowing now that it was common to name buildings back in the day, it does make sense now. Edward Grove is alive.
Right.
I mean, I do like how as the story goes on, you notice the heartbeat and the breathing in the background, and then you eventually hear that little evil cackle as you get closer to the end of it, and little things like the detail of him changing the Doctor and Charley from finest of Scotland Yard to amateur sleuths, I thought was the best way I see it. Is he's a bit like an author writing a story, but even he doesn't quite know who the murderer is yet, so obviously it's full of inconsistencies.
So you're saying he's a bad mystery writer?
Yeah. And I mean, I I did like
it's
the
almost
twist
like
that
it's
there
almost like
is no murderer.
Yeah, it's almost like he's writing in pencil and he keeps erasing, going, no, okay, this is the story. Yeah, and then I
Wait,
gotta go back. I'm gonna change it again.
wait, you mean the Chrysler wasn't invented yet?
Oh, wait a minute. Yes.
It's like, and he's probably going like, damn it, I gotta go back and fix this now. You're killing me here.
And in one of these things, right? As he's making it up, he doesn't have a whole context of things to understand. There's a little hint of the doctor's wife in this,
right?
And not just because there's a house character that has that. There is just a touch of that creepiness.
Yeah.
And so that's a nice, because that's absolutely one of my favorite episodes, and so having that little touch of this was kind of nice. And the arrogance of the house and how and then also I always like when the villain, he just wants to live. Yeah. I mean, right? Like Edward Grove just wants to live. Now he isn't trying to do good with his small life, because even at one point, like, okay, you're dismissed now. I may need a death sooner or later in a little bit because I'm going to need this shot of energy, so I'll be getting one of you to die. But, in his mind, well, and they're going to come back. Just a really unique villain and a unique circumstances. And as we talked about it, the idea that poor Edith is so small and is she and all of us at times, I don't want to get too deep, feel like we are, cogs in a huge machine. And to have that push so beautifully really makes this story a little special.
Yeah. And I think go ahead, Hannah.
I mean, she does say at one point, "Have you worked out who killed me yet? I'm tired of dying."
Well, wouldn't you be? I would think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially after a few times, you're like, okay, this is getting old really quickly.
Yeah, the dentist kept noticing the deaths get progressively more ridiculous and improbable, because you start out with Edith being drowned in the sink when there's not enough water.
And standing up.
Then you get Miss Badley force-fed her own plum pudding. Then you get Edith suffocated with the sink plunger, and then Fred gets run over by his own car indoors.
Right.
And then you get Edith bludgeoned to death with a broomstick handle by her own hand somehow.
Yeah, it's funny how that worked. It's like the most messed up game of Clue ever. But yeah, I love Edward Grove. I mean, I totally get your comparison to House and The Doctor's Wife, Jesse. That's a great comparison. But here what we have is apparently just a typical Edwardian home. We're told it's 22 Edward Grove. So essentially, the name of the house comes from the street that it's on. And because of the paradox of Charley being taken out of time and not being killed in the RO-101 crash, that apparently the paradox that results is what is responsible for the house's creation, evolution, whatever you want to call it. The way that it develops into this sentient, malevolent thing that's just feeding on this constant death and has everybody trapped in this temporal loop that they can't escape. And even the Doctor and Charley ultimately fall prey to that because they try to get away in the TARDIS, and then all of a sudden, like they're out there, and then they start seeing the walls of Edward Grove appearing inside the TARDIS. And then ultimately you see another TARDIS appearing inside the TARDIS, which is never a good thing, as anyone who's watched Legopolis could tell you, but with that whole recursion thing, but it obviously kind of raises the stakes, but yeah, like Hannah says, ultimately Edward Grove just wants to live and doesn't know any better. Even when the Doctor points out, well, hey, you're just a house, you can't really do anything. It's not like you can go for a Sunday drive, or whatnot. And, so, You're living, but it's not much of living. And all you're doing is really just torturing these poor people and killing them over and over for basically your amusement and feeding off of it, just continuing your existence. So it's up. And then Edith has to, she's such a tragic character. We've talked about it that she, didn't think highly of herself, was constantly berated by her fellow employees, and it just develops this huge, massive insecurity and inferiority complex to the point where eventually, as we're told after Charley is believed killed in the R101 crash, she kills herself. But even throughout it all, yeah, she's still kind of trying to help Charley solve her own mystery of her murder, and guiding her, even if it's kind of, maybe it's not even subconscious, maybe it's not consciously, but maybe subconsciously she's trying to do that, and Charley's connection to her is so strong that Charley crosses over and meets her and works to solve her murder, and I find that it's just a really great story idea by Robert Shearman, I think.
Yeah, totally agree. Just really well done. Just an interesting take. And I see they did a novelization of this, so that might be interesting to read. I may want to check that out.
I was not aware.
Now I want to do that.
Yeah, I didn't know they did that.
Maybe I didn't. Maybe I misread. So
I would be
I'll
up for
double
that.
check that.
I would be up for that if they did. But yeah. It's a really fascinating story, and it's just interesting that it's all kind of wrapped up in a Christmas theme. So it's almost like this is you have the Doctor Who Christmas specials. This is almost like the Big Finish Christmas special with this story a little bit. All right. Anything else about this episode that we didn't cover that anybody wants to talk about? Feel free. Anyone? Bueller?
Well, I touched on it briefly, but the soundscape in this one, I could just gush about that.
Very, very atmospheric, isn't it?
Yeah, and I also think, you kind of, with audio, you have to describe what's going on so the audience has a general idea, but whenever they would do that here, I didn't feel like it was, this is kind of exposition-y.
Very
or
well
what have
said.
you.
Good point, Hannah.
Yeah, I think that's also complemented by the soundscape. I can quite clearly picture whenever Edward Grove speeds up the stopwatch, I can barely see the second hand. You get the
the seriously, literally ticking clock as things are chiming down to midnight, and the tension ratchets up right before the cliffhanger, and it's what this story, I think, I think it's an important point that the really great Big Finish audios are the ones that let your imagination fill in the gaps. It's told in such a way that you don't, like you said, you don't need to be expository. You don't need to just bombard the audience with details. You leave it up to the audience's imagination. And I think it's through a combination of the performances, the production values here, the sound effects, the mood, the music, the score that goes along with this, just really creates this really creepy haunted house kind of mood, and with a little bit of Christmas subtext to it, and it's so evocative, and it just really, visualize. You can almost, even though we don't have the visuals, obviously, because hey, it's an audio, you can almost picture that in your mind really easily. At least I can.
Yeah, but I think this would make for if there's a developer out there that wants to adapt it, it would make a great PC game.
Right.
Where you have to work against an increasingly fast-moving clock, and you have to find all the clues and interview all the suspects. Someone get on that, please.
Yeah, that would be fun.
And
That
you got to
fun.
give Hannah credit because she just came up with that idea, you guys.
Absolutely, she did.
You got to give her a piece of the action. Just saying. She's on record now, so
Yes.
we've got proof right here. See,
We do.
There you go. So I got to give her slip a few bucks her way for that.
But I'm pretty sure you have to talk to Rob Shearman and Big Finish first.
Yeah, those guys.
Let's get him on the phone. Let's
Yeah,
get him on the phone right now.
All right, I'll have my people call their people. We'll figure it out. All right. Okay, so if there's nothing else, anybody? Hannah? Now Jesse said you didn't have any favorite quotes. So Hannah, do you have any favorite quotes?
I got a couple. So
Go for it.
This one's exchanged from the doctor and Charlie. The console isn't telling me anything at all. It's just a blank readout. And Charlie says, well, that sounds ominous. And the doctor replies, no, not at all. I've been too methodical recently, I think. Setting coordinates and things and actually deciding where we want to go. I've been getting far too safe and predictable these last few incarnations. Do you know I once traveled for centuries without ever knowing where I'd materialize next? Do you got?
And then Charlie goes, yes, I can believe that.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
So I love that. Go ahead. What's your other quote?
Well, okay. This one's Mary, and I'm sorry I can't read this any other way, so I'm bound to offend some people with this horrible accent. But
Oh, you're fine. Go ahead.
I'm ready to be killed by your own Chrysler or Bentley, whichever it was.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. Applause, everybody. Applause.
Absolutely.
That
I love
was
that.
Beautiful. That was fantastic. Nobody could have read that better as far as I'm concerned. Perfection. All right. I like the doctor talking with Mrs. Badley and the household staff, talking about Edith's first death. The doctor goes, I'd even go so far as to say it was impossible. And Mrs. Badley goes, well, Edith was a very stupid girl, Doctor. She may not have known it was impossible when she did it. Frederick goes, she wasn't the sharpest tool in the box. And Mr. Shaughnessy goes, that's your answer, Doctor? Mrs. Badley has it. Edith was so simple-minded that she didn't realize she couldn't drown herself in the sink, and so she did.
Very nice.
And you're like listening to that going, wait, what?
Wait, what?
So I just love that. The doctor talking with Charlie, where he says, something's wrong about this. It all feels too calculated, too deliberate. And Charlie replies, just as something deliberately shut us out. And the doctor replies to that, and now, just as deliberately, let us in and gives us roles to perform. A pair of detectives trying to solve a Christmas murder. I don't like being given a role to play, Charlie. I prefer to find my own.
Nice.
I like that. And then couple ones here with Shaughnessy and the doctor really quickly. Shaughnessy, first time he says, I assume, Doctor, we can safely conclude it was suicide. And the doctor goes, well, probably not. It's impossible to suffocate yourself on a sink plunger. You need someone to hold the other end, you see. And I like that. And then Shaughnessy saying again, I assume it was suicide, Doctor. And the doctor replies, yes, I imagine so. It's quite clear that Frederick brought the car into the house, ran himself over with it, and put it back outside before he finally expired. And that's when Charlie says, Doctor. Yeah. So,
nice.
Yeah, I like that a lot. All right.
You had a lot of fun with those. Good job.
Yeah, those are great quotes. A lot of great. Robert Shearman writes really great dialogue, especially if you watch Dalek. You know this. He's a really great writer. Or listen to Jubilee. Just magical dialogue. All right, so rating. Let's go with Hannah first. What's your rating for this one?
I give it 9 out of 10 Chryslers. No, I mean Bentleys.
Nice.
Bentleys. I give it 9 out of 10 Bentleys.
Nice.
Very
The Chrysler
nice.
hasn't been invented yet.
Yes.
All right, so Jesse, you got to top that one.
I thought about using that, so I'm glad you did. I ended up going 9 out of 10 shifty eyes.
Nice. Yeah.
You can't
You had
trust them. They have shifty eyes.
You have shifty eyes. Yeah, I love the way that Mary's like talking or whatever, and then oh, it was Mrs. Baddeley. She has shifty eyes. Oh wait, no, it was Mr. Shaughnessy. He has shifty eyes.
Right.
Or yeah, she says like Edith had shifty eyes. Well, she's the one who was killed. Oh, it could. Oh, then it must have been Mr. Shaughnessy. He has shifty eyes. Yeah, that's it. All right. I love this one. It's a particular favorite of mine. I'm not, it's no secret here. I'm giving it 10 out of 10. Grandfather clocks chiming midnight.
Nice.
Bum,
Good.
Bum, bum.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Then you got to do the scream from Edith.
Yes.
Yeah. Nice.
Very well done.
Nice. You got some pipes on you there.
She does.
Excellent.
Yeah, my dog's probably going downstairs wondering what the hell, but it's okay.
Yes, exactly.
You just, you've just upped your resume for becoming a Doctor Who companion.
Exactly.
With lungs like that. Excellent. That's going to be fun to listen to when I'm editing this later, and I hear that scream. See if it blows out my my earphones there. All right. Okay. So really quickly, reverse the polarity. So going to reverse the polarity because since we're ahead of the classic era, we got to go back to the classic era. So if you like the Chimes of Midnight, I'm recommending. Any thoughts, Hannah? Off.
Castrovalva?
That's a good one. That's not bad. But I'm going to go with, I have here, I will give you that one. I'm going to go with Ghostlight. Because this was the second serial from season 26 in 1989, written by Mark Platt, where the TARDIS arrives at Gabriel Chase, the creepy mansion house in Perryville near London in 1883. So we have another creepy house with a name on it. So we had Edward Grove and Gabriel Chase. But unlike Gabriel Chase, Edward Grove is alive. So in this one, it's the Seventh Doctor and Ace story where we find out that Ace had visited the house in 1983, originally felt an evil presence, and the Doctor's curiosity drove him to seek the answers about what was going on with that. And so they find out that the house is under the control of the mysterious Josiah Samuel Smith, who has brainwashed the servants, and his butler is a Neanderthal named Nimrod. The original owners of the house have seemingly disappeared. Ace investigates the cellar, which turns out to be a spacecraft with something trapped inside. The Doctor encounters the evolving creature from the cellar known as Control, which has taken on human form. The Doctor helps release the trapped creature in the cellar, a being known as Light, who takes on the form of an angel. Light is displeased by all the changes that has occurred on the planet while he was asleep. As Control tries to evolve into a lady, and Ace comes to grips with her feelings about the house, the Doctor tries to keep the upper hand in all the events that have been set in motion. The Doctor finally convinces Light of the futility of opposing evolution, which causes him to overload and dissipate into the surrounding house. The Doctor and Ace realize that this was the presence that Ace sensed in 1983 and caused her to set fire to the house in that year. In the end of the episode, or in the end of the story, Smith becomes the new Control creature imprisoned on the ship. Control and Nimrod set off in an alien ship to explore the universe. And the Doctor asks Ace if she has any regrets about burning the house now. And Ace tells him she wishes she blew it up instead. And the Doctor can only smile and say, "Wicked." The end. So
very nice.
So if you liked Chimes of Midnight, check out Ghostlight. I don't think it's as good as Chimes of Midnight, but it's a fun little story, and it's a little quirky, and hey, you get a creepy house. So go for it. All right, listener feedback. Now, we do have some feedback from Holly Mack. Do you want to read that, Jesse?
I would be glad to do it.
It's pretty short, so you can just knock that right out.
Hey, Charles and Jesse and Hannah.
And
this
Hannah.
Was a good story. I forgot that it was set during Christmas time. Though, note to any future traveling companions when time traveling, if you accept any food or drink, accept at your own risk. The whole mystery aspect with Edith and Charley tied the story together. Also, the underlying mystery of how Charlotte survived the dirigible accident in 1930. I love the team-up of Charley and the Doctor. They do play well off of each other. I'll wrap it up here. Holly from Wisconsin.
Yay.
Thank you, Holly, for giving us feedback. I know it's a little bit tougher to do the Big Finish audio, so I really, really appreciate it, as I know Charles and Hannah do too.
Oh, yeah, definitely, because we always love hearing from Holly. She's a wonderful person. You've heard her here on Next Stop Everywhere, and she's kind enough. She also writes in to us now on Titan Talk about Doom Patrol.
Oh, nice.
Very
good.
So I kind of get a little double dose of Holly Mack in my
Nothing
week.
wrong with that.
Nope.
Nice.
That's a good thing, right?
I just started listening to her on the Five-ish Fangirls podcast, so...
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, we got to support.
Nice.
We got to support the Five-ish Fangirls because they're always kind to us, and
Absolutely.
check them out. So while you're at it, if you want to be like Holly, and please do, we'd love to hear from you. So please write to us at Next Stop Everywhere SMG@gmail.com. That's Next Stop Everywhere SMG for Southgate Media Group at thegmail.com. Or you can reach out to us on Twitter at Next Stop SMG on the Twitter machine, or Facebook, Next Stop Everywhere, the Doctor Who podcast, or Instagram at Next Stop Everywhere podcast. And Hannah, where can they reach you on the interwebs?
Well, Charles, since you happen to ask, I can be found on Instagram at My Lady of Sass. I can be found on Facebook at Hannah Skorapa. And I'm on Twitter at HT Skorapa, that is HTEASKORAPA.
Excellent. Yes, everybody needs to like and follow Hannah because she's great about documenting her adventures in Who fandom, and she's always provides great content. So highly recommended by yours truly. She's great. So
and Hannah,
Jesse,
aren't you?
Oh, go ahead.
Hannah, aren't you going through a series of reading Martha-based novels?
Well, I actually have a randomizer function on my computer and a collection of novels, but I am reading a bunch of them, and most of the 10th Doctor ones I have left do involve Martha, apart from 2.
Okay,
Actually, 3.
That's cool.
I just noticed on your Twitter timeline that you were doing that, and which I thought was very, very nice to see.
Yeah,
always good to see.
Yeah, currently I'm going through the Ace, the one that was written by Sophie Aldred.
Nice.
I'm gushing about that one.
At Childhood's End, I believe, is the title, and just that was. I believe you read that one recently, didn't you, Hannah?
Oh, yes, I did. I read
no spoilers.
that
I'm still working my way through it.
In March,
yeah,
before the world went to heck in a handbasket.
Yes.
Right.
And
you enjoyed it.
Yeah.
Good.
And I will say, I'm not giving anything away, but the moment where Ace finally does meet the 13th Doctor, I was listening to the audiobook version with Sophie Aldred narrating, and I gasped, and I probably rewound that thing probably about 10 times because I was shaking.
You didn't see it coming?
Nice.
That's excellent.
No, well, more like oh my goodness, I'm emotional. I didn't think I would be.
That's awesome. I can't wait to get to that part because I'm only about 5 chapters in, so I'm getting there. I'll get there, but yeah, so far I'm really digging the book. So I just thought I'd mention that. All right, Jesse, where can they reach you on the interwebs?
Well, you can find me on Twitter at Jesse Jackson DFW. You can hear me talking to Charles coming up soon. We are currently talking, Stargirl on the Phantom Zone podcast. We are having a blast talking about, and just got renewed, which is great news.
Yeah.
We'll be talking about that in our upcoming Phantom Zone podcast. And then you can hear me on discussing music and all that implies with fans from around the world on Set Listing Bruce. Have some interesting episodes coming up with some comic book writers, and had just on Sunday I talked to the lead singer of a wizard band.
Okay.
A Harry Potter punk band.
Oh, that's cool.
Yes, it was very fun, and she has also written a small collection of West Wing songs. So I'm like, Harry Potter, Bruce Springsteen, West Wing? This may be the perfect guest for me.
I think so.
So look for that out. Charles, how about you? When you are not corralling,
yes,
keeping Hannah and I on topic, where can we hear your fine work?
Well, I don't know about fine, but you can hear my work at Charles Skaggs on Twitter, or at Charles Skaggs on Instagram, or Facebook, Charles Skaggs in Hilliard, Ohio, and my blog of geeky things.
Damn good coffee. And hot.
Damn good coffee and hot. We're going to talk about all the stuff we talk about here on Next Stop Everywhere. Your Doctor Who, Torchwood, Sarah Jane Adventures, all kinds of comic book sci-fi news, and news of my other podcasts for the Southgate Media Group, including the aforementioned The Fandom Zone podcast that I do with Jesse, and where we're talking Stargirl right now, and Titan Talk, the Titans podcast, where DJ Nick, familiar to those of you here on Next Stop Everywhere, and I are talking Season 2 of Doom Patrol, which is also on, HBO Max and DC Universe, and having a ball with that, and where, like I said, you can listen to Holly Mack right in as well, and then also Ghostwood, the Twin Peaks podcast I do with Zan Sprouse, whom, of course, everyone's heard here on Next Stop Everywhere, as we talk Twin Peaks, David Lynch, and a ton of pop culture references, because if you've heard Zan, either here or on, the Gold Standard, the Oscars podcast that she does with Nick and Rachel Friend from the Five-ish Fangirls podcast, they talk about, just dropping the pop culture references and everything, and just they have a ball, and we have a ball on Ghostwood. So if you like Zan, or just, hey, you want to hear us banter back and forth, please check us out. Right now we're going to be reviewing the upcoming David Lynch film from 2001, Mulholland Drive. So, which is a pretty cool flick, starring Naomi Watts. So, and of course directed by David Lynch. So, that's going to be a lot of fun as we go through that. And then we're going to go through the Criterion, Blu-ray release. So, hope everybody checks that out. And then, of course, come on back, because next time on Next Stop Everywhere, episode 191, as we finally make it to the modern era, and Jesse and I, at least at the moment, are yes. Oh, I see Hannah raising her hand. Yes.
If it's not too soon,
Yeah.
I'd be interested in this one.
Oh, okay. So, if that's okay with Jesse, because, hey,
Always.
All
yes.
right. All right. Well, you've heard it here. How's this for a nice little piece of not behind the scenes? This is in front of the scenes.
Editing,
production,
scheduling on the air.
Yes. Yes. So, yes, exactly. So I guess Jesse is going to be joined by me and, hey, Hannah Skorapa. How about that? What a surprise revelation as we discuss The Unquiet Dead, which, hey, kind of continues our Christmas theme a little bit. If you remember so this is the third episode from Christopher Eccleston's single season in Series 1 in 2005, and where we get to meet the Gelf, and also Charles Dickens, again, no relation, but and have a lot of fun with that. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. We haven't talked this episode before, and now I'm looking forward to even more because, hey, Hannah's going to come back next week and talk it over with us. So thank you, Hannah. That was a very pleasant surprise. And
Absolutely, very pleasant
awesome.
surprise.
I feel spoiled now.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you for the impromptu letting me on, because I really like that one.
That's good. That's awesome. So that's what we want to hear. So, hey guys, any final thoughts before we sign off?
So I probably no one cares about this except you, Charles. But,
Okay. Well, all right. Well, I'll come back later then. Oh, well,
No. You. I have shared with Charles. I have, when I started a new job, one of my coworkers, John, was interested in Doctor Who, and he just got HBO Max, and he's working his way through. So he's now on to the second Doctor, and he's going, is he as smart as the other doctors? Because he doesn't seem to be as smart as the Eccleston. And I said, well, you're pretty early in it. I think each of them have their own personality. You'll see. And, so he's loving Tennant, though he misses Eccleston, which is very typical, right? Like you've had that change. So for Charles and the rest of the listeners, I'm going to keep John's journey being shared with it, because it's really fun to have someone brand new who's never seen, and he's coming up after he sees episodes and talking to me about it. So it's been kind of a nice little treat at work.
Something, though, that I was in for the shock of my life one time when I mean, typically younger fans tend to gravitate towards Tennant and Smith. I'm guilty Tennant fan here, but I was once at a parade and I walked up to a girl in a Doctor Who shirt and I asked, "Oh, who's your doctor?" And she said, "Eccleston." And I was like, whoa, hipster fan there.
Yeah, we've talked about this, and till we went back and we've rewatched episodes, I now get how people can love Eccleston and be their doctor, because he really was. And it's a shame we only got one season of him, because he really did bring some interesting things to the roles.
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, it's obviously a big what if, but you kind of wonder, like what would have happened had we gotten that second season. And that's why I still keep holding, as futile as it seems to be, I still keep holding out hope that eventually he's going to show up on Big Finish. So, hopefully.
Cross your fingers.
We got Tom Baker eventually, and that only took like how many years? So maybe, like when I'm about 80, I can finally listen to that Christopher Eccleston Big Finish audio. Yay!
Him, Matt Smith, and Peter Capaldi next, please.
Yeah. I would love Matt Smith. I think Matt would be fantastic on that.
I think so too.
I've listened to this collection of short stories called The 11th Doctor Tales on Audible.com, not sponsor. Yep. And I think he'd be perfect for it. I mean, those are amazing. I mean, like Day of the Cockroach, Hunter's Moon. I'd recommend it.
Excellent. Yeah,
nice.
I've got the book Hunter's Moon, but I haven't listened to the audio. So.
Oh wait, I didn't mean Hunter's Moon. I mean the Hounds of Artemis.
Oh.
Too many hunting dogs associated with the 11th Doctor.
All right. So you got a week as we try to keep those Matt Smith stories straight. But Hannah, I'm really looking forward to you coming back in a week, putting up with our nonsense again. I hope you had fun.
Absolutely.
I certainly did.
Excellent.
Thank you, Hannah.
That's great. And we always have fun talking to you, because I think you're great. And
I agree.
And you're a nice change of pace from Jesse and I being old farts on the show.
Yes.
So it's kind of good. I like to get that younger perspective. So everybody, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed our discussion as much as we did. And then come on back, please, for episode 191, The Unquiet Dead, with special guest companion, once again, Hannah Skorapa. It's going to be a lot of fun. We'll see you next time right here. Next stop everywhere, the Doctor Who Podcast. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.
Bye.